Hello guys and welcome back to episode 3 of this F1 Manager series. Today we're going to be taking on Jeddah and hopefully on this occasion we don't have no technical issues. If you haven't watched the first episode and the second episode where I introduce the series and we go through the Bahrain GP, then make sure you go and do that because now I'm going to spoil it. So we head over to the standings and we go to the race result. And as you can see here, we finished P6 and P7, collecting 12 points in the first race. That's something which we're going to look to improve on. We have some upgrades that aren't going to be ready until around probably Baku. And with Baku being a sprint race, I might not bring them all. So let's just look at how our car fared after the Bahrain GP. Everything's all right. We've got a new ATR period, which we'll deal with when we get our upgrades through. The podium for F2 was Daruvilla, Porsche, and Doohan, and for F3 it was Bortoleto, Colapinto, and Fornalio. So the memorabilia room has been upgraded. We're going to upgrade that once more. We're also going to upgrade the boardroom because that can improve the attractiveness of the team. And then we're also going to do, I think, the team hub. Yeah, we'll do the team hub. It'll increase morale of the drivers and the staff. So now let's skip forward to Saudi Arabia. We have another facility upgrade in the helipad, which we need to get this helipad as high as possible, as quickly as possible. So every time that comes up, we will upgrade it. So the tour centre is now at level 2. We're going to get that up to level 3. These are all things which I think are important. Do we want to let the board attend? I'm going to click deny because I don't know if we can beat their expectations so far. We can continue skipping forward. Memorabilia room level 4. 1.8 million to make it level 5. And then we can just forget about that unless we have to do some renovations. Helipad level 4 now. Let's make it level 5. We see we've spent a lot of money so far in this series on upgrades to team-based things rather than factories and stuff, because I think that it's important to get the money in before you worry about your factory. Finish position, I think we can get both drivers into the top 10. That's going to be our sponsorship for this. So I've picked both drivers in Q2 and Q3, finish position of 10th, and obviously the standard one, which I selected in the first episode, which you probably won't have seen because of the technical issues. So what we're going to do now is going to go into the race weekend.
It's just come to my attention, 63% of you are not subscribed. What are you doing? Click that red button right now.
So, welcome to Jeddah. What we're going to do is I'm going to show you the setup I start with, then we're going to skip right through to the end of Q3. I'm only going to show you anything important that happens as a way so that I don't lose any footage. So, if you see anything after this before qualifying, in fact, then that's because something happened, like a red flag, a big crash, and we'll only focus on teams that can affect us. So the likes of Aston Martin, Ferrari, Alpine, everyone else will try and ignore. So as you can see, set up for 20 laps, fully conserve everything. I don't think I fully conserved with Lewis, fully conserve, and we're going to go into practice 1 now, so I'll see you heading into Q1. Welcome to qualifying here at Jeddah. We have 3 soft tyres available for both Lewis and George. Here is George's setup once again. So this is how I've set up the car. So keep this in mind for when you do your setups around Jeddah. Then obviously Lewis is in here's his setup. Keep that in mind for when you come around Jeddah with Mercedes. Take out that lap, and then what we're going to do is we're going to come back to you when we have completed our flying laps in in qualifying now. It's in the important section. We're going to run in the gap and aim to get into Q3. So we have let out our drivers with around 6 minutes to go. We are the final drivers to set a flying lap. If you look on the left hand side, you see that Max Verstappen is currently the fastest with a 1:27.4. Don't anticipate us to get that. So, while George Russell is completing his lap, I just want to talk about a few things Formula One related. As you know, in F1 news recently, there's been a lot of talk about conflict of interest, and for me, I don't think anybody has the right to talk about conflict of interest, especially when they've let Red Bull own two teams. You've got AlphaTauri and Red Bull, who are very heavily connected, and for me, I don't agree with it. I think when you've got teams like High Tech, you've got Andretti, all wanting to join the grid. There's two other teams. There's an Asian team that wanted to join the grid but had their proposal rejected. So you look at these teams like Red Bull and AlphaTauri who have two teams, and you think, why can anybody talk about conflict of interest when these two drivers, well, these two teams can control four drivers, they can control four cars. Like, you look at AlphaTauri into next season, they're basically copying everything possible from Red Bull, and I suspect that they'll be towards the front end of the grid. So let me know what you think about the conflict of interest claims from former team principals and the fact that people are saying that it's a problem. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Let me know what you think, what you would do to improve. Do you agree with AlphaTauri and Red Bull being so linked, or would you rather have another team that is out there battling for wins rather than being a junior team preparing drivers for Red Bull? Let me know what you think. As we are now watching George Russell cross the line, he is going to put it into P7 with a 1:28.4. Lewis Hamilton now crossing the finish line with a 1:28.5, just about half a tenth between the two drivers, not even half a tenth between the two drivers. So that should get us through to Q2, so you can join me now in Q2. So as this session comes to a close, we are very safe. I don't think anybody is going to knock us out, so we're just going to skip forward, and I'll see you on the flying laps in qualifying 2. We're heading now into qualifying 2. Both drivers are on a used set of the soft compound tyres. We're going to send them out as the first in the first pack of drivers. We're not going to run in the gap here. I think that we should be able to set a lap early enough that keeps us safe for qualifying 3. So what we're going to do is we're going to skip the drivers all the way around to their laps, and we're going to watch Lewis Hamilton this time as he goes around the track. So what are your thoughts on Logan Sargent keeping his seat for the 2024 season? If you haven't seen my Williams review for the 2023 season, I suggested that he should be replaced. I think that he's a rookie that is obviously capable, but I think he needs to do a lot more. I don't quite necessarily believe that he deserves the seat, but I think it's just one big test session for rookies these days, because there's so much limited driving of these current regulation cars, and it makes it so much harder for teams to put them in like race situations. So I also think that there's a lot of rumours going around about Mercedes junior driver Kimi Antonelli. If he has a really good Formula 2 season, will he take that seat for 2025? Obviously that's a long way off, and it's very early doors to be talking about Kimi, but he's had such a brilliant rise through the ranks with Formula Renault, Formula 4, Formula 3. Well, he skipped Formula 3. That's how good Mercedes deem him to be. So it's going to be interesting to see if he ends up doing well in Formula 2. Obviously, the grid next year for Formula 2 isn't fully confirmed yet, but he seems to be a standout as a result of the testing times that were done in Bahrain just recently. So let me know what you think. Should Kimi get the seat in 2025? Should Logan with Logan keeping his seat, do you think he'll make it better for next season? And our laps have now finished. Russell did a 28.3 and Lewis did a 28.2. So yeah, just let me know your opinions on what Williams have done with Logan, if you think it was the right decision or if you would have swapped drivers. We're gonna just sit in the garage on the used tyres for now in this Q2 session, and I'll come back to you if we decide to set another lap. With 2 minutes left in this session, it's now too late for us to go out, so we've got everything crossed that the laps set by Russell and Hamilton are good enough to get us through to Q3. With 3 drivers already finished behind, I think that makes us safe, but we will see. Oh no, Magnussen, De Vries. We are safe and make it through in P9 and P6. So we're going to try and aim again to get ahead of one of the Aston Martins. So hopefully we can get P6, P8 around that area, and I'll be very, very happy heading into Q3. So we're going to use the used set of tyres. So we're going to use the used set of tyres going into the first run of Q3. I'm going to catch you at the end of this first run. So George Russell is coming through to the final corner now. These laps are obviously just bankers. We are going to be putting them onto a fresh set of tyres for the final run of the session. But let's see what George can pull as he comes across the line. He does a 28.3. That is the fastest lap he has done so far this weekend. And Lewis does a 28.2. We're going to be looking for the 28.1s on the fresh set of tyres. I think that should get us ahead of an Aston Martin.
So that's a P3. That's a good lap. So call the car on box.
Yep.
Get those fresh tyres on. As you can see, Lance did a 28.1, so that is where we're going to be aiming with Lewis Hamilton to see if he can beat that lap time. Once Charles Leclerc and Nico Hulkenberg get around that final corner, I'm going to send out Russell, and then we're going to send out Hamilton behind Stroll. Hamilton is going to have to get out of the way of Fernando Alonso, but Russell is now starting his lap, so let's watch this lap on board with George Russell. Just keep an eye on Lewis Hamilton as well as he comes around the final corner in just a few moments time. So George Russell will be aiming for a much better lap. Hopefully he can find himself ahead of Lance Stroll as well. Obviously Stroll could improve on this final lap, but there is only a couple of tenths in between P8 and P6. So George Russell may occur with some traffic throughout this lap, but hopefully it can get out of the way rather quickly and not cause any major issues.
So we have a checkered flag now.
So George Russell has improved his first sector to a 32.5. Lewis Hamilton will be hitting the first timing point of sector 1 in just a moment, and we'll see if he is going better than George Russell. Lewis is on a 32.4. He's about half a tenth clear of George Russell so far. As we can see him now coming into the high speed section. He's going to occur with some traffic. Is the traffic going to hinder him? No, it gets well out of the way. George Russell through the second sector with a 27.7. What is Lewis going to do in that second sector? We'll find out in just a moment as George Russell comes around the final corner. Lewis also on a 27.7, just a little bit slower than George Russell. But let's see what Russell can do as he comes across the line in Jeddah. Can he get above his teammate Lewis Hamilton? Yes, he can, but he just can't quite get to Lance Stroll. Lance Stroll is coming across the finish line now. Can he improve on his lap time? No, he can't. Is Lewis going to be able to improve? Oh, Stroll did improve massively, so I don't think Lewis is going to be able to get him. Lewis was within 2/10 of the Aston Martin. So now I'm going to join you at race day. So welcome to race day. We're going to do something a bit different. We're going to start both drivers on the soft compound of tyres, and then we're going to run a medium. We're going to run both sets on full attack, and we're going to run 2 softs in this race. We're going to aim to pit George Russell around lap 35, and we're going to aim to pit at set lap 17, lap 15 and lap 35. In fact, we might go a lap later and do 16 and 36. So this is what we're going to do with George Russell. with the intent of trying to make up as many places as we can within that soft tyre stint at the back end of the race. Obviously that is about 26 seconds faster than some other strategies. We're going to do something similar with Lewis Hamilton, but we're going to run a double soft to begin, and we're going to push him to lap 16 or so, and hope that there is a big enough gap between the drivers, and then he's going to box on lap 31 for his medium tyre stint. And again, very similar times to George Russell. We're going to start them on full attack in this race. I don't mess with the fuel in any of the races because I don't think it actually gives much of an impact. So now let's get into the first lap of the race. I'm going to show as much of the race as possible, so I'm not going to edit bits out. I'm going to try not to edit bits out anyway. So here we go, 5 lights, and away we go. We put George Russell straight onto ERS battle assist, Lewis Hamilton straight onto battle assist. Nearly said my own name there. So Russell and Hamilton battling into the first corner. But obviously it is important in this race that we get through the likes of Stroll and try and finish ahead of at least one of the Aston Martins. So that will keep us within touching distance heading into the upgrade period of this season. So as you can see, the Aston Martins are already building a bit of a gap on our drivers, but let's not remember that on the first few laps, the AI often push all the way as much as they can, and that is something which I keep in mind, and I'll be pushing our drivers fully around lap 3. So as you can see here, we've got Nico Hulkenberg going down the inside of Lewis Hamilton. Is he going to make a move into the braking zone of turn 1? No, he doesn't. So what we're going to do is we're going to keep skipping forward. We're going to get to the end of lap 2. And at the end of this lap, DRS should be enabled. You've got the Hulkenberg in the back defending from Esteban Ocon. You've got Lewis and George together within a second of each other. So DRS is now enabled. So into the next lap, we are going to push all the way and see if we can close up on Lance Stroll. So all the way to the back end of this straight, going on to lap 4 now, and we're going to set both drivers to push and deploy to see if they can build a gap to Nico Hulkenberg and close in on Lance Stroll. So we're skipping forward quite far ahead of time now. It is now Esteban Ocon ahead of Hulkenberg. Lewis and George are within 2 seconds of Lance Stroll. Obviously that is quite a big gap and it is only growing. What we're going to do is at the end of lap 5 we're going to put both drivers onto neutral, and we're going to see if the drivers can try and keep themselves within this mid-pack where there's no one really bothering apart from each other. We're going to keep pushing until around lap 10, which is where we're going to turn down. We're going to now put both drivers onto standard because we want to make sure that they can hit their box laps. We're going to put them on balanced because if they don't hit their box lap, that could be a big problem for this race. Obviously by slowing down we will lose ground to those cars ahead, but they're all on the medium compound of tyre. What I'm thinking right now is, do I change the strategy so we go onto the hards in the middle, but I know they aren't a great race tyre around this circuit. Obviously we're closing in on the box lap now. Lewis Hamilton and George Russell both entered the pit window. So I've just skipped forward slightly. I had a slight technical difficulty with my controller. It died while we was going through the first sector. So I've skipped back now, and as you can see, Lewis and George are battling, but they are only a few laps away from their box lap. Obviously, as you can see, Lewis's tyres are more worn than George's, so he will be boxing first. And with that soft tyre run, Lewis may end up having to require the hard tyres with that final stint. As you can see up behind, since Lewis and George have backed off, the gap has grown to 9 seconds to Alonso, and the gap has dropped to Ocon to 1.25 seconds. So they are close to their box lap now. What we're going to do is just going to skip through, because we need to hit the optimal lap for both drivers. George will go around one more time, as will Lewis, as they both are going to jump onto a new set of tyres.
Box.
As you can see, George Russell has the bit of extra grip from Lewis Hamilton, as we're going to set up his medium tyre for the next lap.
Box.
So Lewis and George going cleanly together through this section, comfortably in this race. Obviously the guys behind haven't yet pitted, and we could fall foul to a safety car after this pit stop window. So we are going to watch Lewis Hamilton box now as he comes into the pit lane here at Jeddah. The third set of boxes in, and here is Lewis Hamilton's pit stop. Is it going to be better than the ones we got in Bahrain? Yes, by about half a second. He should come out ahead of Yuki Tsunoda, or he might be just a little bit behind. Unfortunate for Lewis, he's going to come out in a little bit of traffic with a Williams of Logan Sargent just behind. What we're going to do is we're going to leave Lewis for 2 or 3 laps now to ease those tyres in, so that he is ready for this stint and to push all the way to the end of his stint. We're going to skip forward now to George Russell's pit. Here he goes into the box. What's he going to do? Is he going to have a quicker stop than Lewis Hamilton's 2.5 seconds? Let's see, as he heads onto the medium tyre now. It is a similar 2.5 second stop. That is hugely important. I think Lewis Hamilton should get ahead of George within the box. Oh, I think that's Lewis going around just now. You can see George Russell in the background coming out of the pits just behind Lando Norris, but just ahead of Logan Sargent, as George and Norris nearly collide. So Russell has got a battle on his hands to stay ahead of Lando Norris on those used soft tyres. Not a battle that we need to worry too much about, but Lewis is coming up to the back of Alexander Albon. Is he going to be able to overtake him? We're not too worried about Norris overtaking Russell, as that will soon change when they box. So we're just going to skip forward. Hopefully Lewis can get an overtake done on Alex Albon. Lewis is going down the inside into turn 1. Is he going to make it stick? He's now on the outside for turn 2, but he is in the slipstream of the AlphaTauri of Yuki Tsunoda. Is he going to make it stick? Is he going to stay ahead of Alex Albon? Yes, he does. So we're only a couple of laps away from when we are going to start pushing these tyres, both with George and Lewis. So we're now going to skip ahead as Lewis passes Yuki Tsunoda. So there is now a 15-second gap. Let's watch that overtake. He goes down the inside into turn 14, makes himself into P10. So all the cars up ahead are yet to box, and we should be P7 when all of the competitors above stop. So let's put a keen focus on, let's look at George Russell now as he's attempting to get around Lando Norris. Both drivers with DRS. Obviously we aren't pushing George Russell at this phase of his stint, and he could be susceptible to Nico Hülkenberg on some fresh medium tyres. But we're now going to skip. We're skipping along. Let's see where we can end up. At the end of lap 21 is when we're going to begin to push as Russell overtakes Norris. Let's watch this overtake. That's a risky move down the inside into that corner, but he holds on. But as you can see on the left hand side, oh no, he's still ahead. And he's now got ahead of Yuki Tsunoda. Let's watch that overtake down into turn 1. Down the inside again with DRS wide open. It's a good move. So, at the end of this lap, we are going to push Lewis Hamilton as hard as he can go on these tyres. So, Lewis Hamilton is now on full attack mode. Got to build as much of a gap to Esteban Ocon as possible, as George Russell comes out just ahead of Esteban Ocon. But what Ocon doesn't know is that at the end of this lap, George Russell will be pushing fully all the way. And then at the end of the race, where most other drivers would stay out and try for the 1-stop, we'll be making a 2-stop. So now they're pushing. George has lost that position to Esteban Ocon. Let's watch that overtake with DRS. As he goes around the outside, heading down into turn 1. Is Ocon on the soft? No, he is on the medium tyre. So we're just skipping forward now, trying to see how much of a gap Lewis can build onto the likes of Ocon and Russell. See if he can close the gap to Lance Stroll, but I don't think it's going to make much of a difference. Lewis is up behind the Haas of Kevin Magnussen, and the Alpine is just ahead of Magnussen. So they are coming down, both DRS wide open, into the final hairpin of the race. So he is unable to make a move, but we're going to skip forward down towards turn 1 to see if Magnussen makes a move on Gasly, but he doesn't. George Russell is still ahead of Esteban Ocon. We are going to skip forward just a little bit more, see if Lewis can make this move into the hairpin at the top end of the racetrack. Doesn't make a move, but he should go around the outside here on this soft compound of tyres to get past Kevin Magnussen and next Pierre Gasly. So there we go, that is 2 really good moves that we've just seen from Lewis Hamilton. Let's see how much more he can close that gap in on Lance Stroll. Let's watch that Hamilton overtake on Gasly again. Just look at what he does with his DRS wide open down the inside as Gasly leaves the door open. Now let's see how much of a gap Lewis has got. We're going to put George back onto standard for a couple of laps because he is struggling with tyre management. At this rate, he would end the stint with 2 less of the tyre. Lewis has built a pretty good gap to Gasly. He can defend quite easily. So Russell now coming through the final 3 corners. It was Russell and Ocon I was talking about then, my bad. So let's skip through to the next phase of this race. Lewis Hamilton will be boxing in about 4 laps time, and he'll be boxing onto the medium compound of tyres. Ocon has overtaken George Russell. This isn't good for Russell's race. Losing that position only puts him at a disadvantage, but we're going to put Russell onto full attack as he gets around Ocon. These two are having a wonderful battle as they've closed in on Gasly. George Russell isn't happy about losing the position, but Lewis Hamilton has got himself about 5 seconds ahead of George Russell. He is in no man's land. So Russell now in cockpit cab, following on the Alpines. He's going to go down the inside of Pierre Gasly. Is he going to be able to get Esteban Ocon into turn 1? Lewis is on his optimal box lap. We're going to set him up to pit for the medium compound of tyres. George Russell is attacking down the outside. He's going of Esteban Ocon. Is he going to overtake him? I think he's going to get him into turn 2. Yes, he does. He gets him into turn 2. Obviously, George will be boxing again for a set of the soft compound tyres at the end of the race, but let's not forget that the soft compound tyres are the much faster race tyre. Lewis has got himself 5 seconds ahead of George Russell. Hopefully that will keep him well ahead after the pit stop. We're skipping forward now to Lewis pitting. So as we see Lewis come around the final corner, he's going to go into the box. After he gets out the pit, we're going to set his medium tyres to standard so he can drive the tyres in safely, not putting the tyres at any risk. Let's see, can they beat the 2.5 second stop that they did in the first one? No, they can't. 0.3 of a second lost in that pit stop as George Russell is going down turn 1. Lewis is going to come out in and around Kevin Magnussen. Although it's Nico Hulkenberg he is going to come out with, but he keeps himself ahead. We're going to put him onto standard. And George Russell is only about 5 laps away from him boxing, so we're pushing him all the way. Obviously Gasly will box again, and he boxes now. Let's see if Lewis can get past him in the pits. As Lewis is obviously defending here from Nico Hulkenberg into the first corner. Hulkenberg is going to go down the inside. He's going to make the overtake down the inside, but can Lewis hold on around the outside, on the inside into turn 2? It looks like he can, but he's going to have the outside line going into the next set of corners. We're just going to watch this battle progress as Lewis holds on to 9th position. These two are battling rather safely right now, but Nico Hulkenberg seems to have just got the edge. But does that mean that Lewis Hamilton is going to get DRS round the next set of straights? So that will be important for this race.
So anything could happen.
So we are watching Lewis Hamilton now onto the back straight. I don't want to move away from this part of the race. Is Lewis Hamilton going to be able to get past Nico Hulkenberg when we get into the DRS zone? That is the big question. Does the Haas need to pit? Yes, he will potentially need to pit again in this race. Let's look at George Russell as Lewis Hamilton goes around the outside and he gets the move done. The move sticks. He's got himself ahead of the Haas car now, but the Haas gets DRS up towards the final chicane. Is Lewis going to be able to hold him off on the inside? I don't think he is, but he defends well and he is on the inside and he is safe now till the end of this lap, but he could be in danger at turn 1. What we're going to do is we're going to skip forward a few laps and let's hope that Lewis can hold on to this position. George will be boxing in 3 or 4 laps time for his soft tyre. There is a yellow flag. Multiple cars have crashed. Who has crashed?
Just look for debris.
Leclerc is in the pits. Is it Charles who has crashed? So there is Sergio Perez here, and that must be Charles Leclerc. They make contact in the final corner. So Charles has now boxed. Perez does not box. So Charles is going to lose a bag of time in the pit lane and he's going to come out just ahead of George Russell because he also had a pit stop issue. Let's take a look at that. So he comes into the box. What is the problem?
But there's a problem jacking up the car.
So they can't jack up the car because of the front wing needing changing, and then he is held for too long at the end. So is George Russell going to get the overtake? Yes, George Russell gets ahead of Charles Leclerc. No penalty has been given. Lewis Hamilton now is 5 or 6 laps into this stint. At the end of this lap, we're going to put him on full push to try and close up to George Russell, who is going to box at the end of the next lap. So we're skipping ahead now. Where is George? He's there ahead of Charles, and what we're going to do is as he comes around, we see it is at the optimal box lap. We're going to box him now for a soft compound tyre. He's going to lose the place to Charles, as we would expect, because that Ferrari is a much stronger car. And then Lewis Hamilton is going to push all the way around the track to make sure that he gains as much time on George as possible before George bolts on the soft compound. So we're going to skip forward now to see George Russell's pit stop. Lewis Hamilton on full attack. Let's see what lap time he can produce. He's been in the 1:32.4s for the past few laps. Let's see what he does this lap. George Russell is in the pits with, he's held. There's a delayed pit stop. 6.5 seconds. That is not good, as Lewis does a 1:31.1 on his medium tyre. I'm not quite sure what the problem was, so let's listen to what Karun has to say.
So the Mercedes crew are out. There's been a problem there.
No more knowledge from Karun. What a surprise. So George Russell is going to come out way behind Pierre Gasly. I think it's going to be a gap of around 3 or 4 seconds. Yep, 3 seconds to Gasly, as Lewis Hamilton is trying to get onto the back of Esteban Ocon, who still needs to pit in this race. We're going to drop George down to standard as well. Actually, no, we're going to keep him on attack. We'll see if he can make it all the way through. And then at the end of this lap with Lewis, we're going to push his ERS deployment. So we're now going to push Lewis's ERS deployment. And then at the end of this lap, we're going to put George on a push and overtake lap. So let's look at George now coming into the final corner. ERS rise, he might run out before the end of the lap. Might run out before the first corner, in fairness. But let's see what he can do. Let's see what the drivers can do on this lap. They're both pushing all the way to the line. As you look at George Russell now, he's closing in on, I think that is Pierre Gasly. George has a lot of ground to make up for that botched pit stop. So we're going to skip forward now to see what lap the two Mercedes drivers can produce. So Lewis Hamilton is going to run out of ERS, as is George Russell. But George is going to get the overtake done on Pierre Gasly into the final corner. So Lewis has just done a lap of a 30.1, and George is going to do a lap of a, at the box, lap 2, he has done a 31.9, but he is obviously in traffic. So let's skip forward a little bit. Let's see what these drivers can do. Lewis Hamilton is closing in on Esteban Ocon. George has got around Pierre Gasly and Kevin Magnussen, and Russell has now got ahead of Nico Hülkenberg. Can Lewis get past Esteban Ocon? A lot of these drivers ahead are doing one-stop strategy, so they are very slow at this point in the race. So let's just watch Lewis, see if he can get past Esteban Ocon on this lap. We're going to put it onto 2 times speed, put it onto 4 times speed as they head up to this corner. He does not go for the overtake there. The next chance for an overtake will be on the DRS straight right here. Is he going to dive it down the inside? Yes, he does. He dives it down the inside. George Russell is 11 seconds behind. He has 10 laps to make up 11 seconds on the soft tyre. He's 2 seconds a lap quicker right now, but let's see how long that lasts for. So we're going to skip forward now, because Hamilton should be able to maintain the gap. So George Russell has got it down to 9.2 seconds. Let's see how much he can keep dropping that gap, because that is important. He's got it down to 7.5 seconds now. 6.5 seconds now. 5 seconds now. George Russell has 5 laps to go, and he's got 3.5 seconds. 3 seconds to gain. You can see him spinning around on the map there. He's within DRS range now. What can George Russell do heading into lap 46 of this race? We're going to watch it on cockpit cam. We're going to skip forward just a little bit to get them into the DRS zone. Is George Russell going to be able to overtake Esteban Ocon into the final chicane? No, he's not alongside or quick enough to get him here, but he's going to be able to get him into the final hairpin of this lap. We put him onto push mode for the fuel. He's going to go around the outside on the soft compounded tyres, and he is massively going to be able to overtake. He is 2 seconds a lap quicker. So George is going to have to push on just for the next couple of laps to see if he can close a bit more of a gap on Ocon, because that is important for our race and for the championship. But George's tyres may not make it all the way to the end, so we need to get him out of DRS range so that we can then conserve his tyres. He's now at 1.4 seconds, so we can drop him down to standard, follow it all the way through. Lewis Hamilton, obviously miles clear. He's not going to get anywhere near Lance Stroll, I don't believe. So that is something that I'm not particularly focusing on. But George Russell is going to have to attack the final few laps because Ocon has come back into this battle. And as you can see, he's only 2 tenths behind now. There is 2 laps left to go, and I just don't think that George Russell is going to have enough tyres to hold him off. So let's put it on ×4. Is he going to be able to break the 1 second? What we're going to have to do is we're going to have to put him on standard for the final lap. Let's skip it all the way around. We're going to protect Lewis because he has bags of time. We're going to put him on avoid. We are to make sure that he finishes out the lap. We're going to put George onto deploy, going through the final straight, because we don't want Esteban Ocon to get him into turn 1, because there won't be enough time to re-overtake in this lap. So George has kept it clean and safe through this first part of the lap. Let's skip forward now to the back straight, where we're going to redeploy his management. So he's going to deploy again out of this corner to make sure that he sticks. So Max Verstappen wins the race, Perez in second, Alonso is going to come home in third. But we are more interested in if George Russell can hold off Esteban Ocon, which he looks like he's going to be able to do. He defends down the inside. He doesn't need to, and he's headed in to that final hairpin. This is the final time he's going to go into this hairpin in this race. We're going to attack and push out of the final hairpin. Lewis Hamilton is coming across the line now to finish in P7. George Russell coming around the final corner. We're going to chuck him on to conserve, make sure that the fuel goes all the way to the end, and there is a 3/10 gap. I think that George Russell has done it. That is P7 and P8 in this Saudi Arabia GP. Obviously, we're still miles away from the Ferraris, the Aston Martins, but that is something that we're hoping some upgrades can improve. We're not going to watch the podium, we're not on it, but you can see here Max Verstappen has taken his first victory of the season with a fastest lap point, Perez in P2 and then Alonso in P3. No big shocks in that top 10. Is there any shocks down at the bottom? Absolutely not. So far we've had no DNFs in this race, so in this series, so we are now P6 and P8 in the championship. Lewis has overtaken, he stayed ahead of Lance Stroll, and we are losing ground. We are 17 points now behind the Aston Martin team. We get some more points. We get 22 more points in the pit stop championships. We're now on 34. We are 35 points behind McLaren. So now, obviously, we get all our sponsor bonuses. That is massively important. And we're now going to look forward to the Australian GP. Within the next episode, we will look at Théo Pourchaire, we will look at Lando Norris, Charles Leclerc as their scouting events come through. We may upgrade a few more facilities, and we may be able to upgrade the next section of our car with the spinning wheel. So let's see what happens in that next episode. If you've enjoyed this one, please click like, comment and subscribe. Let me know what you want to see in the next few episodes of this series, and I'll catch you in the next one. Make sure to go and find me on TikTok, pictured here, and Twitter, pictured here. These are the places where I'll keep you all up to date with all my upcoming videos and my thoughts and feelings around the Formula 1 and football weekend.